There was just so much.
You're listening to a Mamamia podcast.
Mamamia acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this podcast on, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures.
When Lyra Lewis was growing up, she always thought she'd get married and she'd have babies. And that's exactly what she did, just not in the way anyone expected. Lyra had her first baby at 43, and now at age 50, she's had her third.
I felt the society wanted to pigeonhole us, and you need a man to have a child. You need a man to be married to you to make you worthwhile. It was more about my age, is that if I didn't do it now, because my sperm donor is in South Africa, if I didn't do it now, I wouldn't be able to do it.
From Mamamia, I'm Mia Friedman, and you're listening to No Filter. Lyra Lewis is one of the biggest names in Sydney real estate. She's been famous in her industry for many, many years because she's really excellent at her job. But recently, she's become proper famous thanks to the wildly popular reality show that she stars on called Luxe Listings. It gives regular people a look into homes worth tens of millions of dollars and also at the deals that go on behind the scenes to sell them. Lyra grew up in a very religious family and emigrated to Australia from South Africa when she was just 10. She certainly never expected her life to turn out quite like it has, and she's never been happier. And just a note, this interview was recorded just a few days before Lyra gave birth to her new baby girl, Lyra. Lyra, we're the same age. And
50?
Yep. Today, my eldest child turned 25.
Oh, my Lord.
And what's in your belly right now?
That child hasn't even turned of age yet, but she's about to come any minute. So
How does that work at 50?
how does it work with childbirth at any age? Are you asking me? Really? Mia?
How are babies made? Well, how are
My
babies
daughter
made
asked
at
me the
age
other
50?
day.
What
My
did you
daughter
say?
asked me that the other day. I said, ask your father. And she said, I did. And he said to ask you. That's what happens when you have divorced parents. I was like, oh.
It's like,
Well, and I said, they're made with love.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's true.
Yes, but she said, how does the baby get into your belly? And now, because I've got the third with an anonymous sperm donor, she said, who's the daddy of the baby?
Yeah.
And I said, he's a lovely man. He lives in South Africa. And she doesn't know what the word anonymous means, so she thinks his name is called Anonymous.
When I was little and I thought about what age I would have kids, I remember thinking that 24 was around the age that I would like to have a child because any older than that just seemed too old.
I know.
What did you think about did you always want to become a mum?
No, God, no. I mean, I was literally at 35, I froze my eggs because I wasn't ready. I was talking about it with one of my girlfriends today. I was engaged 3 times by the time I was 35. And it was always felt for me like I was like a square peg being put into a round hole. It never felt like it was something that I wanted to do. You've got a boyfriend, he asks you to marry him, and you go, yeah, but you're not really 100% there. And then you start with the wedding plans and you go, oh, shit. And, like we're brought up with this thing that your true success lies, and there's nothing wrong with it, but that's how our mothers taught us. You meet a boy, you get married, you have kids. That is the epitome of success. And I literally...
Is that how you were raised or do you mean our culture?
Our
Or
culture. Both.
Yeah.
And we come from an ethnic culture, South African. It's very much family, and I love that. But for me, it didn't feel like where I needed to be. And I wasn't always a career girl, but I fell into this industry and I loved it. And having kids, not getting pregnant was the first thing on my mind, like safe sex. And
Because we came of age during the AIDS epidemic when we were taught that sex could kill you, not just get you pregnant, but also could kill you. So it was condoms, don't get pregnant, don't have unsafe sex.
Yeah, well, we were Seventh-day Adventists and that was you don't have sex at all.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
What did it mean to be Seventh-day Adventists? What do they believe?
Very strict, very strict. No makeup, no jewellery, no rock music, no sex before marriage.
It's the rock music that leads to the sex,
It really
usually.
does. No, we actually had the drinking, no alcohol as well, not supposed to drink alcohol. So I remember when I was 16, I thought, fuck it, I'm going to pierce my ears, and if I'm going to go to hell, I'm going to go to hell all the way. So smoking ciggies, drinking. I had 4 piercings on one ear, 3 on the other, and I came home and I was like, hi, Dad.
Wait, stop. You got 7 piercings at once and you came home with a ciggy.
No, they busted me for smoking, actually, at school. And I kind of figured, well, if I'm going to go to hell, I might as well just go to hell on the highway. And I just went, phew. And then I moved out with my boyfriend when I was 18. And because sex before marriage was not condoned, so obviously, we were living together. And Mum came over one day and she said, Delene, where do you sleep?
Did she really?
Yeah, because they just didn't want to believe that.
And what did
their
you
little girl-
say?
With my boyfriend in the bed, Mum. So I was a real nightmare as a child because I was such a rebellious human. And I think my first boyfriend was a DJ, okay? So that was, in terms of what you're not supposed to do. You just
see, rock music.
Yeah. So that was, and my mum said to me, you wait until you have children. And then you will see what you've done to me. There'll be payback. And I was a terrible child because I was just so naughty. And then I found
It sounds
my
like you were
career.
a very normal child, but in the context of a very strict religious
Very much so.
family,
Yeah.
it became more of a big deal.
Yeah. And, even now, my dad only asked me about the pregnancy a couple of months ago. He couldn't come to terms, like first to divorce is not the thing, but then to have an anonymous sperm donor. And he just couldn't, he wasn't supportive of me, but he just couldn't understand this. It's quite, and he only asked me a couple of months ago about the pregnancy. So who is the father, Delene? And I said, well, Dad, it's an anonymous sperm donor, but thanks for asking. And he said, I don't agree with it. And I said, I don't think you've agreed with anything that I've ever done in my life, but thank you for supporting me anyway. And I think that is the essence of family, right? They don't have to agree with what you do, but a good family will always support you throughout your journey. And that's what I have unconditionally from them. They've never agreed with the crazy thing that I've done, but I've always known I've been deeply loved. And if things go wrong, I know they always reach out to them. Despite their judgment, they will still love. And I think that's what I want to always give to my girls is that I'm not always going to agree with their choices, but I'm always going to be there for them no matter what, because I've had that in my life. And so I'll definitely give that to them. That's my aim.
When you rebelled and, if are they still in the faith? Are they still Seventh-day Adventists?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Dad's almost like a pastor. He preaches everywhere.
And when did they come to Australia from South Africa, your family?
1982.
How old were you?
I was 10.
And you had siblings?
I've got a sister. She's 2 years older. She doesn't have any kids. It's her choice. And she's a corporate girl. Mm-hmm. So her and her husband have been married 25 years, happily married, gorgeous, gorgeous husband. And he still opens the car door for her. Just beautiful.
Is she religious?
No, not at all.
So you both left the faith
Yes.
in terms of being Seventh-day Adventists, but your parents didn't.
No.
So from what I understand, when children leave or adults leave, when families sort of split from the church in parts, your parents, do they sort of believe that you and your sister will go to hell? Like, are they worried for you? In that, like for your spirit and your soul?
No, I think Dad's let go of that. I think they pray for us all the time. I think they've done a lot of praying for us. And I think that that's what we were brought up to believe, is that if you misbehave, you will go to hell.
Yeah.
Which is crazy because you have kids that are brought up on fear, right? And I respect, like my dad's religion has helped him propel him through years of apartheid. Instead of being hateful, he's loving. He always taught me about when someone treats you badly, imagine just pouring coals of kindness on them. And it frees you. And he's taught us about not getting angry, but having our happiness as the best revenge, really good stuff. And his religion has given him the fortitude to do that. And so I respect that. It was not my choice, but I respect that that's his choice. And it really has stood him in really good stead in his life. And he's a terrific man. But, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I converted to Judaism. And so I didn't tell my parents. And I got engaged. It was the fourth time now. And I said to Dad, so do you want the good news or the bad news? And he goes, give me the good news. I was like, well, I'm not pregnant. He said, good. And he said, what's the bad news? I said, I'm a Jew. And he's like, that's great. He said, because you're coming back to God. And that's the way he saw it, right? And that kind of acceptance, I think, is because we were such rebellious children, it's actually taught him over the years that it's not just his way, but it's accepting that there are many different ways that lead you to the same gate, if that's how you believe. And that's kind of how he is. So he's come to my shul with me. He does Shabbat with us. Because he's, and even after I left my husband, I still retained the Jewish faith.
Did you convert for him?
I didn't convert for him, but I went to classes for him initially because I wanted to see how it felt for me, if it felt real, if it felt authentic, if it felt something that I would take on in a real sense. And for my children as well, his grandparents were Holocaust survivors. So it was important to keep that bloodline going for them, but it wasn't an absolute for me or for them. And I just fell in love with my rabbi, and she is a female, and I just loved her. And just everything that she was, and the other rabbis there as well at the temple was so welcoming, and the sense of family and forgiveness and food and celebration. It was so joyous. Good. Always good. You never leave a Jewish house hungry, right?
Never.
And I just felt like I belonged. And still now, my girls, we do Shabbat every Friday night. They love going to the synagogue. It's just been a beautiful process. And to have, even sometimes my parents have gone to the synagogue when I've been away. How cool is that? Right?
Wow.
Yep. They've come for Purim. We've dressed them up. It's been fun.
That's so interesting about, we live in such a time now that's so polarizing where people are like, if you don't agree with me on everything, I cut you off. But in families, it's a lot more complicated than that, right? And so it's so lovely to hear about a family who can respect one another's choices, because some people might say, well, if you don't accept me, the Deline that wants to live with her boyfriend, that wants to get divorced, if you don't fully support me, that is somehow toxic to me and I must leave you for my – and for some people that is the truth. But your family's obviously been able to sort of sit in this not even conflict but respectful disagreement.
Yeah. I think it's kind of trial by fire because I've done that since I was 16. Yeah. And I think my parents either had to make the choice, and now I'm a parent, I understand that as well. I think any parent can relate to it. You either lose your child or you try and work with them, because the child will do what the child will want to do anyway. And I think the best thing about being a good friend, a good parent, a good human being is giving another person space to be who they want to be and accepting them anyway.
And it seems like you didn't want to be a wife. You were like Julia Roberts in Runaway Bride.
Yes, they did call me a few names. But, my third fiancé, my dad actually called me up and he said, he's asked me if you could marry him. I did try and talk him out of it, but I told him you couldn't cook and that you were a career girl. I was like, thanks, Dad.
How do you break off an engagement?
Well, the first one I was young. I was 22. Oh. And the second one I was 28. And I just wasn't ready. And I was
At what point did you realise that?
Pretty early on in the piece when we started making wedding plans. It was kind of like I felt this pain in my chest, like it was this anxiety, and I was trying to – I say that I was trying to be this square peg fitting in a round hole, and it just didn't feel right to me. I didn't want to be what I felt society wanted me to be. And I didn't want to be, and there's nothing wrong with it, a stay-at-home wife, and I didn't want to be pigeonholed into a situation. And I remember even in recent times, I had a conversation with somebody and they said to me, well, it's your job. You're the mother. And I'm like, excuse me? Because that is not how I see our roles. A good partner should be an equal participant in your life and in childbirth and the whole thing. It's not like you do that, the girl stuff.
Well, maybe not the childbirth. They can't really help that much in childbirth.
They can be there where you scream at them, though.
Yeah, they can,
you did this to me.
Provide their testicles for you to squeeze while you're in labour. But it sounds like you kept, first of all, were these men who wanted you to be in that role? Did they not want an equal?
No.
They didn't?
No.
So why did you keep choosing those guys?
Because I've made wrong choices. And I think I had to look at, this is what was pivotal for me probably 5 years ago when I decided I really wanted to go on this journey by myself. It was one that people didn't necessarily understand, but I knew that I needed to be in a relationship with myself and find out what made me work. It wasn't Deline the worker, Deline the career girl, Deline the athlete. It was just, who am I? Like the existential questions, right? Like really important things. I suppose I had a midlife crisis, if you want to call it that. I mean, instead of going out and buying a Ferrari, I decided to look inside and work out what made me happy. Why was I doing what I was doing and why was I making such bad choices? And really the common denominator in all of that was me, right? You can blame other people for how they are, but those were my choices and they belonged to me. So why was I doing this? And looking inwards, there's a lot of hard work that you have to be so deeply honest with yourself. I took up meditation, I started seeing a therapist, and I really started peeling away the layers. And what you find there is real gold, but it's acceptance of the different and the difficult conversations you have to have with people around you, stuff that you will look at yourself and say, oh, wow, you know. And I'm still learning so much about myself, but I tell you what, my business has never been better than it has been over the last couple of years because my level of empathy, vulnerability, honesty, just connectivity with myself has been amazing, and therefore it's blended into my relationships with people. My friendships are better. I've let go of friendships that were toxic. I've let go of relationships that were toxic, and I focused on the sunshine, positive fuel.
Yeah.
You know? It's been such an amazing journey.
The fourth time you got engaged, you did get married.
I did.
What was different about that time that got you over the line?
My age.
How old were you?
I was 40.
So did you feel like what?
Yeah. Look,
TikTok.
TikTok.
And having a baby out of wedlock, I sound Victorian,
Lord.
out of wedlock, was not an option. Even you had internalized that as being something
Absolutely.
a line you couldn't cross.
You know what is the definition of success? You know, you get married and you have babies. That's the order in which things come.
Yeah.
And even though I was a rebel, that was the order in which things came. And it never crossed my mind to be a single mum. Like you asked me this question before and we went the round way to answer it, I'm sorry. But when you're little, you don't think, I'm going to be a single mum. I'm going to freeze my eggs at 35. I'm going to have a baby when I'm 50. This was not part of my master plan. But I think part of the journey is acceptance of where you are in that journey and going, this feels real to me. This feels really happy for me. I've got this deep sense of happiness. And I've had to work for that, but it's not part of my game plan. I never had that game plan to be a single mum at 50. But I tell you what, I don't think I've ever been happier in my entire life than I am right at this moment because I've done the hard yards to get here, and I'm experiencing happiness in a deeply authentic way that it's not on anybody else's terms.
Yeah.
And it's not part of a master plan. It's just very real. And I get to enjoy these moments with my eyes open and my heart open. And it's made me enjoy my work more. It's made me enjoy life more, and it's made me be a lot kinder, empathetic, and deeper in terms of my relationships with other human beings, you know. And so it's been pretty good, but bloody hard work as well. It doesn't come easy.
Your first marriage ended.
Yeah.
Your only
My
marriage,
only marriage
ended.
Thank you, Mia.
When you were
Yes.
pregnant for the second time.
Yep.
That can't be an easy thing to experience.
No, it wasn't. But it was something that I knew I needed to do because I really wanted to find the happier version of me.
And you didn't feel, I'll just sit it out until I'm through this and maybe I'll revisit it in a year after I've given birth.
I'd already been sitting through it for a number of years prior.
Yeah, right.
And I knew after my first one that it was not a healthy relationship for either one of us. And I had to take my part and my responsibility in that and say, what is my part in this, rather than playing the blame game? What is my part in this? But more importantly, and this was really the pivotal moment for me, is that I didn't want my girls to grow up hearing me being spoken to in a way that was so disrespectful, that was dishonouring myself. And I would never want to hear them being spoken to in that way. And I also felt disempowered in a deep way, because I thought, I'm not being appreciated for who I am. But then who am I? And what do I need? What do I do? You start making a list. And, it's not about the other person so much. Obviously, they have their side of the street they've got to look at. But my side of the street, I can't help somebody else if I can't help myself. So look inwards and stop playing the blame game. And I had to do that. And I realised that this whole thing started and ended with me. And I didn't need to make that call, because I knew that I wanted my girls to grow up in a different environment that showed the best me, and I was at my best self. And, I know a lot of people that have stayed together for the sake of their kids, and I really respect that. I couldn't.
Yeah.
I couldn't.
You were both in the same industry. You are still both in the same industry. Was there a lot of gossip? There must have been so much gossip.
So much.
You're both very high-powered, obviously it was pre-Lux listings, but you've always been famous within the Eastern Suburbs real estate market and within the Eastern Suburbs. I've known your name for many, many years.
We've known each other a long time.
We have. We've worked together before, and I remember bumping into you and your then husband. I think he might have been your fiancé up in Byron Bay one time. That's a good question. I just remember you were such a good-looking couple. I was like, oh, my God.
Not number 4.
Okay. Yeah. So hot, those two. And
that's when I was younger.
So then you look the same. So then you got married, and then you didn't. How did you deal with the gossip in your industry?
I've never paid attention to gossip. When I was in my 20s, when I was coming through the ranks, there was so much gossip that I was sleeping with my boss or with clients, because God forbid you can actually be good as a girl in the industry and not have it sexualized. And I used to think, well, fuck it. I know the truth, and I know you don't get anywhere in life by sleeping your way to the top.
I know. I heard those same rumours about me. They still exist.
Really?
Some were repeated quite recently, and I'm like, well,
that's nice.
If I slept my way to the top, I mustn't have been very good at it, because it took me a really long time, and I only got to the middle in magazines.
Well, that's really, really unfortunate, because I actually was giving a speech and I was like, you know what, I must have been really good because I'm really, really busy. Yeah. Right? Wow, thanks.
You are very bendy.
Very
clearly,
bendy, yeah.
Very bendy.
Very flexible, available 24/7.
But how do you, that stuff is so
hurtful.
And just insulting, because you're fucking good at what you do.
There were a lot of women that were spreading it as well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Same about me. There was women that were spreading it about me too.
And we should be each other's supporters, because we know how hard it is. But sometimes, God, some women can be such bitches, and you just kind of go, guys, let's support each other. We're in it together.
Some clients must try to crack onto you though.
I've always had a rule from the very beginning that I've never dated a client in my life. Ever, because
that rules out a lot of people in the Eastern Suburbs.
It does, and it makes it really shit when you're dating.
Yeah.
I remember there was a time after this. I can't believe.
What about former clients?
Okay, no.
Not even former clients.
So I was on Hinge, and what's the other one? Bumble. For about 6 months, and so I used to get hit or whatever they call it. I would always, before I replied, I'd go back to my database and check to see whether or not their names were on my database, because I was like, I cannot do that. I cannot open that door. I can't.
Because it has to be a hard line in the sand. It has to be a hard line.
And I actually say to my girls, like, you have to decide what you want to be known for, your skill set or another skill set. Yeah.
Or how bendy you are.
How bendy you are. And I really saw it happen to other women in my industry, and I decided very, very early on that it was not going to be for me. And it's never been for me, and it still won't be for me, because I just don't want to cross that line. Like, my career is far too important for me, and I want my conversation always to be about my work, not who I've slept with and not what I'm wearing.
Oh, well, definitely about what you're wearing, because you always look immaculate.
But you talk about my results.
Always.
And how bendy I am,
and
of
how
course.
bendy you are. After the break, Delene explains to me her no exceptions dating rule that avoids gossip and drama, and also the way that she avoids the manufactured melodrama that so often comes with reality TV. You're an incredibly hard worker, and you're also one of the nicest people in a very cutthroat industry, and in the most cutthroat part of the industry being the eastern suburbs.
Yeah.
How have you done that?
Well, firstly, I don't listen to gossip because gossip can make you really bitter and you buy into it. It's just like going down a rabbit hole. It never a good thing can come of that. And it's other people's opinions. I think my therapist said to you, other people's opinions of you doesn't really matter, right? It's theirs. And you will never please everybody. All you can do is stick to your path and forget about it. And I remember I was in my 20s and I was hearing this stuff and it was really hurtful. I didn't have a family in the eastern suburbs. I didn't have a network in the eastern suburbs. I had just me. Mm-hmm. And I'd hear these things and it would get really upsetting for me. And then I realised that the only way I would shut them up was to work harder and get results. And most of my clients now are mums, women, because they know that I'm never going to crack onto their husbands, current or ex, that I'm going to work my ass off, and I've got a great skill set that doesn't involve being bendy.
And also just doesn't involve being duplicitous or lying or any of – I mean, I know it's a stereotype, but
it's true.
And it's also, you see on Lux listings the stereotypes of you've got Gavin and Simon as the stereotype.
Yep.
And then you're sort of like the Mother Teresa's the wrong word, but you're like this Zen earthed anchor through the whole industry and through the whole show, which I think is very true to who you are. Were you worried about doing that show and what it could do to your business?
Very much. Because
that's
I was
a big risk. I was really surprised
huge.
to hear you're involved in it.
I was surprised that I said yes. But also, what actually happened was they approached and I did the kind of pilot, and I think one of the producers is not involved with the show anymore, but I heard him over the thing saying, she's not popping. And I turned around to him and I said, I heard you say that. And I said, my business is not to pop. My business is have my results pop, not me. Yeah. And I'm not for television. Like I'm not va-va-voom in your face. And I honestly didn't think that and I actually said to them at that time, I don't think I'm the right person because I'm not a popper. I'm a worker and I've got my career. I don't want this to ruin my career. And this is like, I don't have a backstop.
How did they convince you to do it?
There's a guy from Amazon that flew out. He was here already. He came on a couple of walks with me from Bondi.
What was the pitch?
He didn't pitch. That was the best thing about it. He just said to me, I want to find out who you are. And I want that to be part of the show. And he did say to me, there'll be parts of the show that you won't like, but your part is just to be you. And that's all we want. And I really appreciated that. And for the most part, they've done it. There have been a couple of places where I haven't felt a deep level of comfort. And I've realised now, and I did at the time, I stood up for myself. I said, it's not part of my spiritual, mental, or emotional journey. If this is what you want from me, I'm not the right person for you.
How were you aware of that at the moment? Do they say, can you just do that again and can you say blah, blah?
Yeah, and I say no. Sorry. And, TV land is a different place. Like in season 3, you will see me a lot less because there are parts of it that just didn't work for me. And it's a fabulous series. It's actually really good. But I'm not going to do things that don't resonate with me. And I don't care how much money you pay me. I'm just not going to do it.
Has it been good for business?
My business was already pretty good. I think it's been good I think if your thing is notoriety and that kind of thing, it's been good for that because I do have people coming up to me. I was just in Hawaii and my baby's been with the girls and people came up to me, mums especially, and saying it's really nice to see a working woman and giving it to the boys. I don't wake up in the morning and go, I'm going to give it to the boys. That's not my thing. But results speak louder than words, right? And so if that's the way they see it, then that's good. But I think in terms of understanding how we work, understanding the differences in which we work, I think that's been really good for business because it's made people see how we work in very vastly different ways.
Yeah.
And you can choose one way or you can choose another. It's not like we mesh in terms of how we deal with things at all. And so people can see that. And they actually, when they call me, they've made a choice already, which is kind of cool.
One thing I don't love is all the old lady jokes.
Oh, yeah, I don't like them
And
either.
obviously that bristles with me because
Yeah.
I'm your age.
Yeah, but they're also, these boys are young.
I know.
Yeah.
And how much do you feel that sort of misogyny of the old lady? Because it's never said in a complimentary way.
Well, even some of the girls in Gavin's office said that as well in season 1. And it's quite funny because to my face, they're amazingly lovely. But behind my back and on camera, to actually have seen that, it was extraordinary to watch. And I was actually it was confronting. But I've dealt with being deprecated all my life. I mean, when I was young, it was like, don't pay attention to the young girl. Now, where I'm older, it's almost like, don't pay attention to the old girl. And I'm like, well, first of all, I'd love you at 50 years old to be doing what I'm doing. Sit in my shoes for a day or 2 days and see how that goes for you.
Sit in my very high heels.
In my very high heels.
Mate.
Walk in them, sweetheart. But also I've never listened to the white noise and that just makes me feel sorry for them because they don't have an understanding of what it really takes.
Something that you haven't mentioned, not only are you a woman, you were a young woman, now you're an older woman. There seems to be no middle ground for us. We're either young and patronised or old and patronised.
No. In the middle of that is what's called the childbearing age.
Oh, that's right. Then we're mummies.
Yes.
Something you haven't talked about is being a woman of colour.
Yes.
Because the eastern suburbs of Sydney are not terribly diverse.
No.
There's not a lot of people of colour. There's not a lot of women of colour working in your industry.
Yeah.
You came to Australia from South Africa, obviously escaping apartheid.
Yep.
What's that been like?
Do you see, my dad never taught us to be colour conscious, so I don't see myself as a woman of colour. I see myself as Delane. I've got long hair and I wear high heels and I like my smile. I don't look at myself in the mirror as being a colour. And my dad said that is exactly why he wanted us to leave South Africa, because he didn't want us to look at each other and people as, that's a
Because there was literally
colour
a
of the
caste
skin.
system, wasn't there? A
So
colour
you're black,
system.
you're Indian, you're coloured or you're white. And
there were certain laws and certain places you could go depending on which of those classifications you were. Because my father was also left South Africa because of apartheid.
Were you born in South Africa?
I wasn't, but he was. So he came out when he was a bit older than you, but his whole family came out. He was maybe 20.
Wow.
And they also left as a political protest against apartheid back in the 60s. And they were white, obviously, but they also wanted to leave that system.
Yeah.
And I remember having to say, explain to people when I said my father's South African, because around that time that you came out, there was that sense of there were boycotts and South Africa was rightly being demonised for having this legal system
Sanctions,
of apartheid.
the whole thing, absolutely.
So was it a
should.
surprise when you came to Australia?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't want to come. My dad did, and he and his brother came out here, and he tells the story now. It's quite an extraordinary story, is that they had the UBD, remember the old street directory? And they chose different suburbs.
Before we had Google Maps.
Before we had internet and phones. Mobile phones. And he and his brother had different suburbs that they go to, and they would door knock printing businesses and say, would you like people to work for you? And that's how, and they would just go, they spent, I think, 3 months here. I didn't know that. I only asked him about that recently. And he was so determined to get us out of there. We left there with about 10,000 Rand, which is not a lot of money. And we settled here. He got a job working for a printing business in Hornsby. One of the Seventh-day Adventist people kindly gave him a job, and his brother. And we came out here with nothing. And we thought, like, Australia was going to be a place full of kangaroos and stuff. Our church gave us a box of toilet paper, toothpaste, things like that, because they thought we were literally going to a country that was crazy. When we got here, a lot of kids used to tease my sister more saying, you come from Tarzan and did you have tigers and lions as friends and things like that. So I think my sister felt a lot more than me. I was just like a sporty girl, just involved with sports. So, but it was a big, big deal. But Dad just said he never wanted us to see people by the colour of their skin. And also I think because he had 10 brothers and sisters, his mother was white. She kind of looked like the Queen, white skin,
White.
blue eyes, translucent, always with a hat and bag. And her husband, my grandfather, was a black Mauritian man. So they had mixed kids, yeah? And there were kids that were, when apartheid came in, you were separated from your family because you couldn't live in a white area if you had dark skin. And you couldn't live in a black area if you had white skin because mixed marriages weren't allowed. So
They were illegal.
My family experienced all of that.
Wow.
And Dad was just like, I never, ever want you to look at people. And I teach my girls, we are all the same inside. We are all the same colour inside. My daughter has got fair skin and blonde hair. She looks like her dad. My second daughter has got chocolate skin like me, and she's got blonde curly hair, and we're just the same inside. And I want them to learn that because, again, the woman of colour, I've never defined myself by then. I want to be a girl that works hard and gets results. And how people see me is up to them. It's not how I see myself.
Do your daughters get treated differently
No.
because of the colour of their skin? Do they have different experiences in the world?
No, I don't believe that they do. And I think the world is what you make it to be as well. If I go and look for people that are going to define me by the colour of my skin, I will find them. But I don't look for it. I look for the positive in people. I look for the good. And I find that 90% of the time. And if people want to say and talk trash about me, that's absolutely fine. They're entitled to their opinion. I'm not going to look for a world that's full of hate and vitriol. I'm going to look for a world that's full of love, compassion,
I like
and
that
kindness.
world.
Yeah, it's our choice, right?
You had your first baby at 43. That's pretty late.
Yeah.
Did you have to thaw out those eggs?
Did.
And were you ready, or was it just
I
like
was ready. I was absolutely ready.
you wanted one at that point?
Yeah.
The reason you froze your eggs at 35, is that because you hadn't managed to get married yet?
Yeah, no, I'd left my third fiancé and I was like, so, Doc, what do I do now? And so she actually said, this is your last chance you'll be able to freeze your eggs because 35 is pretty late. You should have done it at 30 or 25.
Did you get a lot?
I did, actually.
Stacks.
Not as many as I would have gotten if I was 10 years prior, but I was like, I spent my 20s trying not to get pregnant.
Yeah.
I'm not thinking about injecting myself at 25. I'm thinking about which pub I'm going to on a Saturday night.
So after you got married, how did you go, okay, it's time to thaw those babies out?
Well, we wanted to try naturally. So I called up my doctor and I was like, hey, so I'm thinking I'm going to come off birth control.
At 40?
At 40. And she's like, Dee, you've been on Depo-Provera, which was an injection for like 15 years, and that thing just stuffs up your body. And I was thinking not having periods was a bloody great thing. It's actually not a good thing. And so I had to retrain my body completely. And you know what? We just did IVF. I tried all the herbs. I tried everything to do it naturally. Like there was not one herb that I wouldn't try. I was running marathons. I was running. I was doing everything. And I was seeing these people that are really unhealthy getting pregnant around me. I'm thinking that's not fair. The IVF doctor said to me the most beautiful thing. He said, you only get so many eggs in your life. You can do whatever you want. You can take whatever herbs you want. But that's the unfair thing about being a woman. And I think Serena Williams it was so interesting, her journey. We all as women have to make this pretty unfair decision, career or babies. And it'd be great if you can have both, but there's always a sacrifice. I have to sacrifice a lot to be able to have my career, have my babies and do what I want to do.
What do you have to sacrifice?
Time, my friendships. Obviously being in a partnership with someone, because that just can't happen because I have to give my time. Where's my focus going to be? Do I want to split myself in 10 or split myself in 2? And my choice right now is to split myself in 2 because those 2 parts are the most important parts.
What are the parts?
My family life, myself, and my work. That's it. And I would rather give myself wholly to those 2 parts than to feel that I'm, basically being shattered into a million pieces trying to please everybody and not pleasing myself and not looking after my babies. Like, I haven't worked this hard to get my children into this world and then not give them the love that they deserve. It's just not going to happen. And people know, like boys in my industry, they constantly say, oh, Delene's not available Thursday, Fridays. And I'm like, watch me. Because I'll be there exchanging a contract at 11 o'clock at night while everybody else is sleeping. My kids have been put to sleep. They know they are deeply loved. I've got a nanny at home looking after them, and I'm there exchanging their contract and making that deal happen. So I won't ever let something slip through my fingers.
But that isn't the end of my chat with Delene. In our bonus episode that is exclusive to Mamamia subscribers, I asked the tough questions. Why another baby, Delene? You're 50.
Why not?
Because you've already got 2.
Yes.
And you're 50.
You sound like my dad.
And in this episode, Delene talks about why having a 3rd child was so important to her, exactly how she chose the sperm donor, and what it was like travelling to South Africa for 24 hours to be inseminated. You can listen to that right now. Just follow the links in our show notes. You can watch Lux Listings on Prime Video now. The assistant producer is Emmeline Peterson. The executive producer is Eliza Ratliff, and I am Mia Friedman. Thanks for having me in your ears.